Good morning to you. Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your Hurricane Pro and HD video blog for Saturday, June 17th, 2017. Tropics becoming more active. Two areas with high probability of development over the next 5 days, Gulf of Mexico and the tropical Atlantic. If we look at the visible satellite shot this morning, you can see pretty obviously where each system is located. This one not designated with a number and the letter. It would be 93L. 90 through 99 is what they designate these fledgling systems with, and then the letter L for Atlantic, just as a sort of first step in the process. This one is designated as 92L. It looks very small and kind of feeble, and it is. It's a small amplitude, low energy overall tropical wave, but it's vigorous, okay, and it doesn't have to be very large. You remember Hurricane Andrew, just as an example, fairly small hurricane that went through South Florida, and by contrast, Hurricane Katrina much larger. And so, just because they are small doesn't mean they don't pack a punch. And this tropical wave is pretty vigorous. In fact, if we take a look at the vorticity signature, you can see that fairly well right down there at 5.9 degrees, and we'll call it 6 degrees north latitude. And this shows the health of the system. It's low-level vorticity or spin in the atmosphere, and it's not elongated, and it's it's reaching up here onto the scale, really showing, like I said, its vigor as it moves across the tropical Atlantic there. So even though it's not a large area, in fact our system in the Caribbean a little bit larger in size, this should go on to develop, at least 70% chance according to the National Hurricane Center. And as I mentioned briefly here, here's the system in the Caribbean trying to take shape as well. Looking at the wind shear, for the most part, winds are starting to calm down just a little bit. Still some red zone up here with our Caribbean system, but I think conditions are starting to change. And then out here in the tropical Atlantic, a fairly small area of favorability, because then you have this trough of low pressure associated with this upper level low carved out to the north and west. And all of these change over time, of course, and so what may be unfavorable now could change and become more favorable later on down the road. If we look at the various plots for 92L, we see generally fairly good agreement through the next 3 days that this will head towards the Windward Islands, Trinidad, Tobago, and the southern Windward Islands as a whole between now and maybe the next 72 hours. If we look in here, pretty good clustering in terms of not only the spatial distribution of the different tracks. We don't see them up here and some over here, and as well as the temporal or the time distribution. What do I mean by that? We don't have a 72-hour dot here and then another one over here and then some of them back here indicating uncertainty. Bottom line, this looks like between now and 3 days it'll be just crossing the southern Windward Islands. So that gives us some time to monitor this for sure. Looking at the intensity guidance, I would discount this purple one up here, the H-Wharf model, pretty aggressive. Not out of the question, you never say never, but I would more so focus on, again, the consistency in the envelope here, the fairly close agreement of all the different intensity models that are displayed being fairly in good agreement through the next 36 hours or so. Beyond that time, wind shear, different things going on in the atmosphere could have an impact on this system. But for the next couple of days or so, it looks like it will become a tropical storm. And if we look at the GFS from the 6Z run, we don't have the system entering the frame just yet. If we look at the system in the Caribbean, it's trying to develop here in the 850 millibar field. Again, this is about 5,000 feet up in the atmosphere. And we're looking at the same type of chart that we have here, except this is the model version of it going out in time. This is valid tomorrow morning, and then it's Monday morning, and then Tuesday morning. We see a couple of things here. First of all, with 92L entering the Southeast Caribbean, and some of these wind flags in here approaching 50 knots, 60 miles per hour at 5,000 feet up. And so this could be a small but fairly vigorous tropical storm. And then we have our system coming out of the Caribbean trying to focus, probably a sloppy looking system, and whether or not this actually happens remains to be seen, but interesting nonetheless that this tries to get going as we move through time. Finally going out to Wednesday, fairly well organized as this approaches the northern Gulf Coast. Not the most healthy looking of vorticity signature here, but certainly something to keep an eye on, especially that this might not turn and head into northern Mexico or Texas. You got this ridge of high pressure to the north, another one over here to the west, and this is sort of your alleyway. So this is going to have to be watched fairly closely. 92L here, probably tropical storm. Maybe if it organizes first would be Brett, moving on through the Caribbean Sea after passing the Windward Islands. And then it begins to weaken by day 5, curiously enough. Maybe strong upper level winds coming across the area, running against these lower level winds. So we'll see. This is 5 days out, and there it is over the deep south. If this is what happens, this is a complex forecast with what will go on here with the system soon to be designated 93L in the Caribbean Sea. So it's busy. It's only mid-June, and we have quite a bit to talk about already with these two systems. And, you know, we'll see what happens. You have some great tools in Hurricane Pro and HD to track along. A lot of these graphics are in there that I'm using in the update. And so, hey, at least you won't be caught by a surprise. All right? Have a great rest of your Saturday. As always, we appreciate you tuning in. I'm Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com. That's my website. And for Hurricane Pro and HD, I'll be back with more for you throughout the rest of the weekend.